What is up, everyone? This is Mirror Image. I know I haven't made a lot of videos recently. That is mostly due to the recent Mesmer nerfs. I shouldn't really say recent because they've been going on for quite some time. At any rate, if you love the class, you gotta play it even if your class is getting nerfed. So without further ado, I bring to you a new build, one that does not focus primarily on phantasms or shattering. If you look at the forums or keep up with them, you will know that shattering builds are among the most popular builds available right now. They're great for PvP, for World v World, and even for, well, pretty much everything. PvE, you do AoE damage. Dungeons, you can put out a high amount of DPS. The problem with it is that with the nerfs, Mesmers are becoming less and less viable as damage dealers. They are still very good damage dealers, but other classes like the Warrior, they just press 2 and they outdo you already with their 100 blades. So, as a way to sort of deviate from the crippled damage that the Mesmer can deal, I decided to make a tanky build, one that focuses on support while providing boons to yourself and to your allies. First thing we're going to be looking at is the gear. I'm using gear that I got from Honor of the Waves. There are only two ways to get gear with this particular set of stats. You can do Ascalonian Catacombs for the Ascalonian tiers, or you can do, as I mentioned, Honor of the Waves. You cannot buy this gear from the trading post, which is a shame, but if you want to run this build, you will have to earn it through those dungeons. The gear that I'm using has power, toughness, and vitality. The main reason I got this gear, obviously, since it's a tanky build, is for the toughness and the vitality together. Toughness reduces incoming damage from physical attacks, and vitality will reduce the effects of, or the sort of the stress that conditions put upon you. You can take more from bleeds, from poisons, and from burns, for example. Aside from that, I have two Knights swords. The Knights have the highest amount of toughness out of any gear in the game. And the reason being why I got these on the swords is because when you have a sword, you're going to be head-to-head with your enemy. You might want to have the highest amount of toughness possible while you're using those kinds of weapons. Staff also power, toughness, vitality, although I got this from Ascalonian Catacombs because, hey, it's pretty much the easiest dungeon to run in the game. Why not save yourself some gold and go run a dungeon or two, make some money in the process? So I haven't mentioned sigils. We have Sigil of Nullification, 6% chance on critical to remove a boon. This is a build focused on debuffing enemies and buffing your allies, which is why I have Superior Sigil of Purity, which removes a condition granted that you hit a critical, which you have a 6% chance of whenever you land this on a critical. Superior Sigil of Hydromancy. It may sound a bit odd, I suppose, but when you're wielding dual swords and you want to get away from your enemy, typically you will switch to your staff and use Phase Retreat. That's usually enough to get you away from your foe, but for an additional couple of seconds to get away, this freezing effect for 3 seconds will allow you to put more distance between you and your enemy when you're trying to regain health and stay away from dying. As far as jewelry, there is no soldier's gear that is of exotic tier, so I had to go with rare tier gear. I'm hoping to substitute all of these with fractal equipment as it is released. But right now I'm just using the soldiers, power, toughness, vitality, and sapphire jewels for healing power, and then power, and then toughness. For the rings, I'm using ascended rings. I originally had soldiers, and I'll switch them out based on what I'm doing. If I'm doing a regular dungeon, soldiers. If I'm doing fractals, I'll use these because of the +5 agony resistance. As you get past level 10, you'll start wanting to invest into your rings and your ascended gear into making it agony resistant. This is a build that is primarily built for fractals, as we're all doing it. I am currently on level 23. If you are interested in running with me and need a tank, because that's probably what I'll be doing, just PM me and invite me along. Anyways, I haven't talked about the runes yet, but I'm going to mention them as I talk about the traits, after I talk about the utilities. These utilities are the bread and butter of the build. You can switch them out. For example, if you depending on the situation, when you're fighting in the maw layer, and you got to collect those crystals in order to avoid the enemy's attacks. I will typically use portal entry, mirror images, and blink. The reason being is you can blink to the crystals, having set up a portal, set up another portal at the crystal you just retrieved, and bring it back to your friends. Mirror images is actually used for a defensive measure, and when you're about to be attacked and you run out of dodge, oh no! Hit mirror images and distortion and you negate any damage incoming, even from the boss attack. When I do not have a specific role to fill, I will be using feedback to reflect projectiles, null field, remove conditions off allies, and remove boons off enemies. Also Signet of Inspiration, which I'll talk about in just a second. And then of course Time Warp. The reason being is I've traded Glamours, which these two skills are, so that their cooldowns are shorter by 20%, and that they also cause blinds, AoE blinds. Very useful when you're tanking that the enemy can't hit you, right? Also, they're all ethereal combo fields, meaning when you use a combo finisher, such as Phase Retreat, or Swap in the second skill of Illusionary Leap, you will gain Chaos Armor, which is very useful in this build. You get boons anytime you're hit, and you lose conditions, or your foe gains random conditions as it hits you. Excuse me. Time Warp is also an ethereal combo field, so you have 3 skills that you can use to gain Chaos Armor in addition to the Chaos Armor skill. The last utility, Signet of Inspiration. Originally I went with the Signet of Midnight, which improves boon duration, because this is a build that focuses on having boons on you as long as possible. But I found in the long run, Signet of Inspiration is more beneficial to your team, as all the boons that you get on you, you can spread to your allies. And additionally, you get as a passive effect, you get a boon every 10 seconds while you are in combat. Very useful. When you're getting Aegis randomly and you're blocking extra attacks, that's very useful. Every 10 seconds you get a block, potentially. Usually it won't happen like that, but it is a possibility. The other things I want to talk about are Chaos Storm. Do not use this skill on your foes. Use this skill on yourself and your allies. The boons provided by this skill are essential, even if you aren't running a tanky build. The benefits of putting it on yourself as opposed to your enemy are monumental. When you're rezzing an ally, for example, I have it traded so I will create a feedback bubble, blocking projectiles that are incoming. I'll also toss down Chaos Storm on me and the ally that I'm rezzing. That way I'll potentially get Aegeus as well as my my downed ally, and I'll be able to res him without taking very much damage and getting him up more quickly. The other 2 skills I want to talk about are, I'm just going to say this in the most bizarre fashion because I'm not positive of the exact way to say this, but illusionary riposte. And what this skill does is you basically are allowed a block. Very useful when you are close to head-to-head with a big boss who can one-shot you, and he has a big hammer. You can use illusionary riposte, and you can block that attack. Likewise, Blurred Frenzy in this build is not meant to deal damage. You do not use Blurred Frenzy to deal damage. You don't spam it. It is purely 100% to negate incoming damage. When a boss is gearing up to use his big attack, you use Blurred Frenzy. When you're about to receive agony and die an agonist death, you use Blurred Frenzy. You will negate that agony. When you see those red rings forming and you know it's about to hit, you click Blurred Frenzy and you are free. It's like having an extra distortion card in your arsenal. Now I'm going to talk about the traits. Pardon me for rambling, but I am kind of telling you about a build here. Chaos, the most essential tree that we are investing in. Why? Because you get extra toughness, extra boon duration. Boon duration, boon duration. As you can see, it is very essential, or it is very key to this, a key component to this build. The first thing we're going to talk about are the minor traits, 2 of them. The most important minor traits in this build. Metaphysical Rejuvenation, in conjunction with Illusionary Membrane. When your health falls below 75%, which it will, often, you will gain 10 seconds of regeneration. When you gain that regeneration, you also gain 2 seconds, or you gain protection for 2 seconds when you gain regeneration. So when you gain the regeneration, you also gain protection. We have extra boon duration from having chaos, or investment into chaos, and if you look back at the runes that we have, not only do we get extra toughness, we get extra duration for the protection that we have on us. Additionally, you gain protection for 4 seconds whenever you're hit. In other words, you will have protection on you almost the entire time. If you do not have protection on you, you are doing something wrong or you are not in combat. Also, with these runes, you gain magnetic aura for 5 seconds when your health falls below 20%. Basically, what that does is reflects incoming projectiles. Basically, further protection. Back to the build though. For my first major trait, I have illusionary defense. Basically, you get damage reduction, 3 for every illusion that you have out in the world. Descent into madness, you can switch this up. Right now I've been using this one because I like to jump off things and not die. And also I like to make as many chaos storms as possible. And Descent into Madness lets me make them when I am falling to my death. Also, Chaotic Transference, I don't really mention this one because it focuses on condition damage, which this build isn't really about. So, the last skill, absolutely vital, Chaotic Dampening. Basically, extra toughness and a reduction on your cooldowns for your staff skills. So Chaos Storm down to 28 as opposed to 35 seconds. Very useful for all of these skills on the staff, and the staff will be the weapon you're using the most, keeping you and your teammates alive. Next, we have Inspiration. You'll gain extra vitality, which means you will be able to deal with conditions better, and healing power, which means obviously your heals will be better. The heal that I typically use is Aetherfest, and you'll want to use this when you have as many illusions out as possible. Hopefully 3. With that, your heal will increase an additional amount, and I believe you can get well over half your health if you use it correctly. For the first major trait, Medic's Feedback. The reason being is you want as many glamours out as possible. Not only does it protect you from when you're rezzing your ally, which is immensely helpful, you get an extra glamour. That glamour also blinds with dazzling glamour. So as you're rezzing, anybody that's trying to hit you will be temporarily blinded. Which is the other useful thing about the glamours in this build. They don't only do what their description says, they also will blind. Very useful. Phantasmal Healing. You don't have a lot of healing power with this build, unfortunately. But when you gain regeneration, you gain also protection. This is another reason why you should have protection constantly. This is not a shatter heavy build. The only time you should be shattering is when you're dazing your target because you're about to use one of their big skills, or you're using distortion to negate that damage. Otherwise, you should have phantasms out providing regeneration and therefore protection. I didn't mention vengeful images, but basically not shattering your clones means they'll be doing damage because they'll be living, and they have retaliation, so the damage being dealt to them is a percentage of that is reflected back to the original source. Second major trait, Glamour Mastery. Very essential to this build. There's also one for causing glamours to last longer, but I would prefer to make more than for them to last longer, which is why I went with this skill as opposed to the other one. So basically you can use feedback and null field more often than not. Lastly, the illusion tree. Condition damage and shredding recharge rate. Those two aspects aren't as important. This isn't conditions or shatter builds, so yeah, but the traits in it, like I mentioned, are very important. Illusionist Celerity. Always put 5 points into illusions. I've said that in every video. Everyone says that in all their videos on all the forum posts, always have illusionist celerity. For my first major trait, illusionary invigoration. Very important for tanking. It is possible to substitute it with masterful reflection. It basically reflects, but you're already negating the damage. Basically, it's a way to attack with distortion. Useful, but not as useful as being able to use distortion twice for potentially 6 seconds based on how many clones or phantasms you have out. Basically, you can be invulnerable more often. In conjunction with Blurred Frenzy, you can chain a long line of being invincible, which you don't really want to do. You want to use these skills when the boss is using his big skills. Illusionary Retribution, not going to talk about that. Confusion, doesn't matter for this build at all. Dazzling Glamours, already mentioned, causing blindness whenever you use your glamours. AoE blinds, you can't top that. Basically, whenever I see a huge group running at me, if they're archers, feedback. They're all blinded, and their attacks reflect back at them. Awesome. Make sure whenever you have these glamours out that you're using phase retreat. It is, I think, on a 5-second cooldown with the staff, this chaotic dampening trait. So whenever you have feedback, null field, or time warp up, make sure you're using phase retreat to gain that chaos armor, making you stronger. I didn't mention the specifics of the actual stats of the build. For attack, you have about 2,800 with the staff, only 2,600 with the swords, but that's more for negating damage than dealing it. Armor is the same on both levels, around 3,000, and then your health is 22k with the staff and 20,000 with the swords. I don't have footage yet of me using this video. Basically, I do really well when I'm not filming, and then I start filming and I start PMing people and make stupid mistakes. So I don't have any footage of using this build yet. I will include a video in the future that shows how to use it. But basically, make sure that if you're using this build, it's not just stand in the fields and sit there. It's make sure you're using these things at the right time. Your Blurred Frenzies, your blast or your combo finishers, Chaos Storm, save it for when there's a down person or when you have a group of your allies balled up. Make sure you put it on your allies. Basically, be cautious, be aware, and be smart. Play like a Mesmer. Anyways, like I said, I'll be doing a lot of fractals, level 23 at the moment. If you would like to run it with me and are in need of a tank, I don't want to be the only tank, but I'd be happy to go along with you if you PM me. I hope you enjoyed this build. Give it a like if you liked it. If not, leave a comment, and please try to be constructive and not rude. Thank you very much for watching this video. I appreciate your support. Have a good one, and keep on being mesmerized.